half, Ambassador Isaksai participated in the Security Council. Ladies and gentlemen, if we were allowed to speak to the Council today, I would have first of all informed the Council of the meeting of the National Security Committee of Pakistan, chaired by Prime Minister Imran Khan, where the overall situation in Afghanistan was discussed. Pakistan has been a victim of decades of conflict in Afghanistan, and we desire peace and stability in our neighborhood. The world knows of the sacrifices that we have made. In our meeting today, the Pakistan stance that the conflict in Afghanistan never had a military solution was confirmed. The ideal time to end the conflict through negotiations might have been when the US and NATO troops were at their maximum military strength in Afghanistan. Continuation of foreign military presence for a longer duration now would not have yielded any positive outcome. Therefore, endorsement by the Biden administration of the previous US administration's decision of troop withdrawal was indeed a logical conclusion to this conflict. It is now time for the international community to work together to ensure an inclusive political settlement for a long-term peace, security, and development of Afghanistan. Ladies and gentlemen, Pakistan is making active efforts to promote an inclusive political settlement in Afghanistan. We, at our invitation, the leadership of a number of political parties and groups in Afghanistan, representing all the multi-ethnic groups apart from the Pashtuns, are present in Islamabad and have met with our foreign minister and with our leadership today. They have promised to engage continuously with the Taliban and to try to evolve an inclusive Afghan government. Pakistan will work with them and with the Taliban representatives to advance this objective, an objective of an inclusive political government, which is important for durable peace and stability in Afghanistan. If we had spoken in the Council, we would have also informed the Council of the efforts we are making to facilitate the safe evacuation of diplomats, representatives of international organizations, and others from Afghanistan. Pakistan's Foreign Secretary today briefed the diplomatic corps in Islamabad that the Embassy of Pakistan in Kabul will continue to facilitate visas for diplomats and other international personnel. Whenever needed, arrangements will be made for issuing visas to such people on arrival. A facilitation center has been set up by our Ministry of Interior to ensure the expeditious processing of visas and other requirements to enable the smooth and timely evacuation from Kabul. We will try to mount a series of flights to Kabul airport as soon as conditions allow in order to continue the evacuation which we have already started. Earlier today, we have evacuated a number of people from the Danish embassy, 421 Afghan employees of the Danish embassy, which we are evacuating from Kabul. Thirdly, Pakistan has called upon all Afghan parties, including the Taliban, to ensure the preservation of law and order in Kabul and elsewhere. Our immediate priorities should be aimed at the maintenance of law and order and safety and security of all Afghan civilians, especially women and children. Fundamental human rights must be upheld. All civilian property and infrastructure must be protected. There must be complete respect for human rights and international humanitarian law. And we support the statement of the Secretary-General in this regard. Fourthly, the safety and security of the diplomatic community and premises, as well as UN personnel, humanitarian workers, and other international staff, is paramount. There is need to urgently address the humanitarian situation in Afghanistan. UNAMA, we hope, will make an evaluation of the humanitarian needs of the Afghan people. We urge the UN Secretary-General to report as soon as possible on the humanitarian needs in Afghanistan in order to mobilize emergency help through OCHA and other international agencies. We call on all Afghan parties to ensure unhindered access and humanitarian aid across Afghanistan, as well as to ensure the safety and security of UN personnel and humanitarian workers. Pakistan will facilitate such operations. Ladies and gentlemen, apart from these immediate actions, the international community should look ahead to other steps designed to promote durable peace and stability in Afghanistan. The infrastructure destroyed in this long conflict needs to be reconstructed, including the transport infrastructure, which can enable Afghanistan to serve as a hub for regional trade and commerce. The international community also needs to engage with the new authorities in Afghanistan to eliminate the threat posed by terrorist organizations which have used Afghanistan's territory with the sponsorship of the intelligence agencies of some of our neighbors for attacks and sabotage against Pakistan and other neighbors of Afghanistan. Groups such as the Daesh, the TTP, the JUA, the ETIM, IMU, these are all organizations which must be contained and their activities constrained and eliminated from the territory of Afghanistan. Ladies and gentlemen, that is what I had to say. Open to your questions.
Ambassador, you talk about an inclusive government for Afghanistan, but don't the Taliban now want to rule on their own? Do you have any indication from the Taliban that they would accept an inclusive government? And if they don't, will Pakistan recognize the Taliban again as the government of Afghanistan?
I think the Taliban have said that they will accept an inclusive government, that they would wish to have a government which represents all groups in Afghanistan. And we would like to take them at their word. We are working towards that end. That's why we have invited the representatives of the Afghan parties, or the non-Pashtun Afghan parties there in Islamabad today. We're talking to them. They are agreeable to engage with the Taliban in order to form an inclusive authority. And we hope that our efforts and the efforts of other friends will be successful.
Michelle Nichols from Reuters. How important is the role of women in a new Afghanistan government, and how concerned are you by rights abuses by the Taliban against women?
Thank you. No, it is obvious that the women of Afghanistan must continue to play an important role. They have demonstrated their ability to do so, and we are hopeful that the Taliban authorities and the new inclusive government will respect that and will enable them to play that role. The Taliban statements have said that they accept girls' education, women's working under an Islamic system. And as you know, in Islam, women have equal rights, and we hope that those rights will be respected in any new formation in Afghanistan. I'm sorry?
And that women should be a part of any new government. There should
Well,
be female members of a new Afghan government.
Well, we hope there will be female members of the Afghan government. It is, of course, for the Afghans themselves to come forward and put forward women candidates or women who are willing to be part of this inclusive government. But we certainly, from our part, would hope that women will be represented and will be able to participate in the future of Afghanistan.
Did you say you're evacuating Pakistani nationals or Afghan nationals?
We are evacuating all diplomatic personnel.
Your diplomatic?
All diplomatic personnel who wish to evacuate and wish to come through Pakistan, all representatives of international agencies who have requested our help in being evacuated, and all other personnel who are in danger. We would be willing to look at the possibility of taking them out.
So you're helping UN national staff and international staff
Absolutely.
evacuate
Absolutely.
via Pakistan?
We are in touch with all the international agencies, IMF, World Bank, etc., who have offices in Kabul, and whoever wishes to leave from the diplomatic personnel and from the international agencies, we will process the visas. Some of the visas we will issue on arrival, so we will facilitate their evacuation. The issue, of course, now is Kabul airport. Apparently, there has been some incidents there. So I hope that we will be able to resume flights. The Pakistani International Airlines will arrange the flights, and we will take out people who we process.
When was the last time a flight went out from?
Today.
Today.
This
So
morning.
they're at the airport.
This morning we evacuated personnel from the Danish mission.
So the Taliban is cooperating with Pakistan on this evacuation?
Well, the international airport, as you know, is under U.S. control now.
Ambassador, one more question. In terms of the way Pakistan sees things, the inclusive government, but after that, does democracy return to Afghanistan? Does Pakistan believe Afghanistan should still have a democratic system?
Well, you know, James, we have a democratic system. For Afghanistan, the final choice is it's for the people of Afghanistan to choose whether they will have, what is the system they want. They want the Islamic system. I think they have to talk amongst themselves and evolve what sort of system they want. It's obvious that we will need a new constitution, will be needed, and it is for them, therefore, to evolve that constitution amongst themselves, and we would not wish to dictate anything in that regard.
We heard from different Security Council members today saying the Security Council should act. The Secretary-General also said this. What do you think the Security Council should do in this situation?
Well, I think in my opening remarks, I tried to spell out what we think should happen. The Security Council, I think, first of all, it's important that the UN is there and should continue to be there. The humanitarian needs need to be met, and the UN is best placed to do that. UNAMA is there. We hope a good early assessment will be made of what is needed in terms of humanitarian help for the Afghan people, and that this will be provided, and Pakistan stands ready to facilitate such humanitarian help. As far as any other actions, I think we should, the United Nations should see what the Afghans require, and to continue to help with the negotiation for a inclusive political government. I think that the role for the United Nations, we should continue to support the Afghans to come together. And that sort of encouragement should be necessary, I think. Thank you so much. Assure you that we will take you over, because that depends on the other side too. But if you want to go to the border and see the situation, and there have been various kinds of reports coming out, please, you know, she'll arrange your visas, and we'll put you on a flight whenever you want.
Great, thank you.
No, at the airport. How is this being facilitated? Who's protecting the airport? The U.S. Marines?
We understand that the airport is under the control of the U.S.
Right. Okay.
So that's, you know, we have to work with them to get people out.
And they're cooperating, or what? I mean,
Of
what's
course,
the
yeah.
scene?
No, I think that's the purpose. To be there is to enable people to leave. You know.
How long will this continue? This evacuation?
No, I think that's a good question to ask the U.S.
Can you clarify, should the Afghan ambassador to UN continue to perform his functions and not?
I won't want to address it. I hope that he's able to represent whatever is the authorities that emerge in Afghanistan, so he represents his country rather than himself.
Just to represent himself, not country?
No, but at the moment it's very unclear who he represents. The government which nominated him is not there. The president the president who signed his papers has fled. So the question arises: who does he represent? I hope he will continue to represent the new authorities, but that's for the Afghan authorities to determine. So at the moment, it's a bit of a limbo, you know, his situation.
Thank you very much.
want an inclusive government in Afghanistan, that want human rights in general, women's rights in particular, to be respected, and we want terrorism not to have anymore a safe haven in Afghanistan. And for that we need the unity of the Security Council, the unity of the international community to be able to speak with one single voice. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Secretary
you,
General.
Victor.
Hi, Kate. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Sorry? Yes. If only. It's all the questions you were afraid to ask, but are actually asking. Oh, God. All right. Hold on 2 seconds. All right, as you will all have seen, this morning the Secretary-General took part in an open meeting of the Security Council on Afghanistan. He appealed to Council members and to the international community as a whole to stand together, to work and act together, and to use all the tools at their disposal to suppress the global terrorist threat in Afghanistan and to guarantee that basic human rights will be respected. The Secretary-General called upon the Taliban and all parties to respect and protect international humanitarian law and the rights and freedoms of all persons. Mr. Guterres says he's particularly concerned by accounts of mounting human rights violations against women and girls of Afghanistan who fear the return of the darkest days of the history of their country. The Secretary-General noted the UN is committed to supporting Afghans and that we continue to have staff and offices in areas that have come under Taliban control. He said that the UN presence will adapt to the security situation, but above all, we will stay and deliver in support of the Afghan people in their hour of need. The Secretary-General noted that the following days will be pivotal and that the world is watching. He stressed that we cannot and must not abandon the people of Afghanistan. And on the humanitarian front, what our humanitarian colleagues are telling us that since July, there's been an influx of people fleeing to Kabul and other large cities seeking safety from the conflict and other threats. 17,500 newly internally displaced people have been identified in the past month, most of them arriving in recent days and have arrived from Ghazni and Logar provinces. Some 13,500 of these people have received support in the form of food, cash, healthcare, household items, and water and sanitation support. Assessments were ongoing yesterday morning, that's August 15th, with interagency teams deployed around Kabul to assess humanitarian needs. Despite intense challenges, humanitarian organizations, both the UN and NGOs in Afghanistan, are committed to delivering aid and services to millions of need while adhering to humanitarian principles of humanity, neutrality, impartiality, and independence. $1.3 billion humanitarian response plan for Afghanistan remains just 38% funded, leaving an almost $800 million shortfall. Also want to flag that on Friday, and I don't know, you may have not seen this, the fifth report of the Secretary-General on Children in Armed Conflict in Afghanistan was released. It highlights that an additional 5,770 boys and girls have been killed or maimed in Afghanistan between January 2019 and December 2020. Furthermore, child casualties for the first half of 2021 constituted the highest numbers of children killed and maimed for this period ever recorded by the United Nations in Afghanistan, a situation compounded in the last few weeks and days. The other big story we've been following is, of course, the earthquake in Haiti, and I want to give you an update on what we're doing there in order to support the government and assist those impacted by the deadly earthquake. Our emergency relief coordinator, Martin Griffiths, allocated $8 million from the UN Central Emergency Response Fund to support the humanitarian response. This money will provide essentials such as health care, clean water, emergency shelter, and sanitation for people impacted by this disaster. Our humanitarian colleagues are telling us that access to the southern peninsula where the quake hit is challenging because gangs are controlling movements, local authorities are negotiating access, and an initial convoy of 6 vehicles with UN staff from various UN agencies and the government traveled to the impacted area yesterday. Further convoys carrying supplies are traveling today. Staff from the UN's disaster and coordination teams are also arriving in the country to support coordination assessments. A UN humanitarian air service helicopter managed by the World Food Programme is transporting government and staff into impacted areas along with medical supplies and other essential needs. WFP says they need $1.4 million for this critical air service to remain operational till the end of the year. The most urgent needs are expected to be linked to provision of medical service, water, sanitation, hygiene. UNICEF will send 3 health emergency kits to 2 hospitals in Lekai and one in Jeremy, which will help about 30,000 people. For its part, the UN Migration Agency is providing life-saving assistance, including blankets, hygiene kits, jerry cans, repair materials, and tarpaulins. It's also focusing on finding safe buildings where thousands of dissidents can shelter in the approaching storm, which is likely to cause flooding and mudslides. And will, of course, this impending tropical storm is very much likely to complicate rescue efforts. And you will see that we also issued a statement over the weekend in which the Secretary-General extended his deep condolences to the people and government of Haiti. And we're also sad to report that one of our own staff member died in the earthquake. Turning to Lebanon, our humanitarian colleagues told us that yesterday, as you will see, a fuel tank exploded in the country's north, reportedly killing 28 people, injuring more than 80. We and our humanitarian partners responded immediately by supporting area hospitals, which declared a state of emergency. Earlier today, the resident coordinator and humanitarian coordinator, Najat Roshdi, led an interagency UN mission to Tripoli to visit hospitals treating those injured by the explosion. The incident comes as Lebanon grapples with a deepening crisis as fuel and electricity shortages make the delivery of basic public services difficult. Major hospitals across Lebanon are operating at a reduced capacity. The delivery of life-saving care could be further curtailed due to a lack of electricity. We, along with our partners, are trying to ensure the delivery of critical basic services. Last week, the UN launched an emergency response plan for Lebanon, which calls for almost $380 million to help 1.1 million of the country's most vulnerable people, including migrants. The new emergency response plan complements long-standing efforts to support refugee and host communities impacted by the Syrian crisis. A couple of notes in answer to questions I've received. One on Venezuela. I can tell you the Secretary-General welcomes the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding between the government of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela and the Unitary Platform of Venezuela for the start of a comprehensive negotiating process. He encourages them to fully commit to an inclusive and meaningful dialogue with full respect for human rights. The Secretary-General also reiterates his strong support for Norway's facilitation efforts and welcomes the readiness to assist of Mexico as the host country and of the Netherlands and Russia as accompanying nations. He echoes the call of all members of the international community to support a negotiated solution that is owned and led by Venezuelans themselves. And turning to Zambia, the Secretary-General congratulates the government and people of Zambia, as well as the electoral authorities, on the conduct of the August 12th general elections. The overall peaceful conduct of the elections is a clear testament to the continued commitment of the Zambian people to upholding Zambia's democracy, peace, and stability. The United Nations will continue to support the government and the people of Zambia in their efforts for a democratic, stable, and prosperous country. Quick note from Fiji. World Food Programme, World Health Organization have transported more than 15,000 kilograms of medical supplies to treat COVID-19 patients and protect frontline workers. WFP's humanitarian air service flew oxygen concentrators, pulse oximeters, masks, and other supplies at the request of Fiji's health ministry. To date, the Pacific Humanitarian Air Service has operated 30 flights transporting 250,000 kilos of vital cargo to 14 countries and territories in the region. And you will have seen that yesterday we issued a statement in which the Secretary General said he was saddened to learn of the loss of life and damage to infrastructure due to floods and mudslides in northern Turkey following the recent devastating wildfires in the country. He extends his deep condolences to the families affected. The UN stands in solidarity with the people and government of the Republic of Turkey at this challenging time. I will take your questions, Michelle, and then James.
Thank you, Steph. Just to follow up on the comment by the Secretary General about the UN adapting its presence in Afghanistan, how many staff are still there? Is it still 300 international and 3,000 national? Have any left, planning to leave? Where will they go?
The numbers of staff in country have not changed since I last shared with you. Obviously, and to put this mildly, the security situation on the ground is complex and fluid. I was talking to our security colleagues this morning. They are monitoring the situation on an hourly basis. They're in touch with the folks on the ground. I think everybody's trying to get their footing in terms of the situation as it is. And I think all of us, especially our humanitarian colleagues, are doing their utmost to ensure that humanitarian aid continues.
And what kind of communication is the UN having with the Taliban?
We are having contacts on the ground through our political mission. Mr. Bays.
So could you just expand on that? Who has the Special Representative Deborah Lyons, who has she spoken to? Has she met any Taliban representatives in Kabul at this stage? Has she spoken to Mullah Brother in Doha? Who has she spoken to?
I can't give you any of those details at this point. We're having the contacts that we need to have to ensure, first and foremost, the safety of our staff, our national staff, their dependents, and our international staff.
Sorry, I'm trying to read my note here. Different issue. The Ambassador of Pakistan talked again about an inclusive government, and the Taliban saying they'd welcome an inclusive government. What efforts are there currently underway to try and persuade the Taliban that they should go ahead with that idea, and to speak to other political actors in order to try and broaden this beyond just the Taliban ruling by themselves?
Well, it's clear to us that various members of the international community are having contacts. What the Secretary General's position is, and I think he just really outlined it to you, is the importance of the international community to speak with a single voice to the Taliban, to ensure the protection of human rights, especially of women and girls, and all sorts of other issues, as he outlined. If ever there was a need for one unified voice on an issue, I think it is for this. Beitul.
Thank you, Steph. On Afghanistan, two questions. The U.S. is trying to relocate thousands of Afghans in Qatar, and I'm just wondering if the UN or UNHCR is involved in this deal. And you talked about the internally displaced people, which is, I believe, 17,500. Do you have an estimate of how many Afghans have left the country since the beginning of this year?
Okay. On your first question, no, I have no information on what you mentioned with, I think, Qatar. I will check with our UNHCR colleagues about how many have left. What is clear is that a basic principle of international refugee law is that there should be no refoulement, that people should be given refuge when they are fleeing, literally for their lives. Madame, and then we'll go to you.
Stefan, could the failure of America in Afghanistan have geopolitical consequences?
I mean, does the situation in Afghanistan, will the situation in Afghanistan, can it have impact beyond its borders? Yes. Yep.
Afghan permanent representative to the UN. What's his status? Will the question of his status will be given to accreditation committee in September? And has anybody, well, Taliban, I guess, should do so, raise the question about the representation.
So on the Afghan permanent representative, I mean, you saw that he spoke and was invited to speak by the Security Council. We, as far as I know, and as of this morning, we had not received any communications regarding the permanent representative. At the end of the day, the issue of credentials, who is recognized as sitting behind a nameplate, is up for the member states to decide. As it's publicly known, there will be a meeting of the Credentials Committee to discuss Myanmar. Whether or not Afghanistan is brought up on that agenda, it's something for you to check with, I think the Permanent Mission of Cyprus chairs the Credentials Committee. Abdel Hamid.
Thank you. I have two questions. You know, the rules of procedure are very.
Abdel Hamid, I can't. Abdel Hamid, shut down your video and let's see if I can hear you, since I know what you look like.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Under rules of procedure, Security Council 37, is a country involved with the conflict. It's supposed to be invited. In 10 days, the issue of Afghanistan has been discussed at the Security Council, and Pakistan was not invited to address the Council. It is the most concerned country on earth on what's going on in Afghanistan. Isn't that some kind of violation of the rules and procedures of the Security Council?
Abdel Hamid, you know very well I will not answer that question. That is up to the Council presidency, the Council members to interpret the rules, to apply the rules, to decide on what rules of the provisional rules of the Security Council, which have been provisional for some time now. Your second question.
My question on Palestine. This last night.
Abdel Hamid, I cannot hear you. If you can try to disconnect and reconnect, and we'll go.
And they get four and left. I can't. Hello?
Yeah, I can. Were you asking about the situation in Jenin? Okay, from what I did understand, Jenin, and I would refer you to what the special coordinator, Tor Veneslan, said, which he said he was alarmed by the incident in which 4 Palestinians were killed by Israeli security forces who reportedly came under fire during an arrest operation in Jenin. He called on authorities to swiftly investigate the incident. Okay, any other questions? Yes, James.
Yeah. So a few more questions and a follow-up. First with a follow-up then. You mentioned the national staff and local staff that you have in the country, and the numbers had not changed. Can I ask you specifically about the local staff and their dependents? I'm told that they number about 18,000 people. What is the UN going to do about them? What assurances is it getting from the Taliban? Will it be facilitating? I mean, I'm assuming some of those local staff maybe work on sensitive issues like human rights. Will it be facilitating the departure of some of those?
All this is extremely fluid, to say the least. We are obviously extremely concerned about the fate of the local staff and their dependents. And as you pointed out, a lot of these staff have done very critical work on behalf of the United Nations, on humanitarian issues, on behalf of various committees of the Security Council. The international community owes them a great debt. And one, it is clear that the Taliban and any other authority have a responsibility to protect and ensure the safety of United Nations staff, whether they be national or international. And we are doing whatever we possibly can to ensure their safety. But I can't go into any more detail at this point.
Okay, a related question then. The airport. The UN has its own terminal with its own entrance at the airport. It has its own aircraft. Are you able to operate your aircraft currently, or is NATO / the US not letting you use the airspace if you wanted?
We continue to be in touch with various authorities that control the ground and the air, and I will leave it at that.
Okay, and one last one, just to clarify, I think I know the answer, but is the UN doing any humanitarian work on the ground, any of its very good work it does across Afghanistan, or are basically all of those white trucks confined to base?
Look, it kind of depends on the location. We have humanitarian presence in places that have been under the Taliban control. I think it's on a case-by-case basis. I don't think so. And I was trying to be honest, I was trying to get a bit of that granularity for you, but I was not able to get what I wanted, and understandably so, given the situation. I mean, I do know that WFP is and the rest are assessing the situation on the ground, trying to figure out how we continue essential operations. We're in touch with the relevant authorities. There are about 18 million people in Afghanistan who need our help, and we continue to be focused on them.
If you could get us an update on that, but also if you could try, I know how busy they are and how difficult it is right now, but try and get us a briefing from Kabul either on the overall security situation or specifically the humanitarian situation.
We may be able, we're in touch with one of the humanitarian agencies, and we may be able to get somebody from them to talk to you.
So, to ask the question a slightly different way, when was the last time a UN plane took off?
I don't have those details. Voilà. Thank you all.